Hey James, how are ya?
Susie, it's good to see you.
You as well, as always, in our virtual world. And
I know it. Weren't you wearing that the last time we saw you?
good one. I'm just gonna ignore that and move on. So I was thinking about today and what we were gonna talk about, and it really struck me. I was watching the news last night and they were talking about some of the things that people are saying now that they've gotten used to in
Oh
our
yeah,
old world versus our new world. And I thought that'd be really
sure.
interesting for us to even kind of dig into some nuances that we're not aware of. And what came to mind was to kind of put this in context is remember that video from way back of that guy that was on BBC Live and his child
Oh,
came
that
into the
expert, and
room?
he was trying to give an interview, and his
Yes.
and his his child came in, and the nanny came running after her.
Yes. And I
Yeah,
remember seeing it and being like horrified for him. It's a live shot. Like you shouldn't know like you have another world. You are
right,
in your
right.
seat. And I've seen it recently. And what I didn't realize is like he pushes his kid aside. And I'm like, what a horrible. So you see it so different now because that's our world. And so things that shift. So let's talk about that. What's
Yeah,
shifted?
I think the most compelling thing about that is that made the news. There
Yes.
was a guy who was doing an interview of some kind, and his child walked in, and that was like top of the news for
For a long time.
globally. That wouldn't make the news today unless that kid walked in with a polar bear. I mean, that happens all the time. And you're exactly right. So many things have changed. And I think as leaders, it's super important for us to acknowledge that, because I think we have some some expectations of the
Mhm.
way that our employees are going to behave and the way that we behave. And if we don't acknowledge that things have shifted, um, I think we will be less effective. And to finish that thought, it's not like kids these days or millennials. It's not that I'm hiring a different subset. The world in total completely has shifted. And so it's easy, and historically we've talked about subsets, and maybe hiring in Denver is different than LA, and there's been changes, but this is
Yeah.
a truly global phenomenon. And
Yeah.
so it is something that is unavoidable. And while you might think that the people you work with are not affected by it, they are. Whether you're in oil and gas, whether you're in yoga, or whether you're in software development, we have all been touched by this. And these things as leaders are happening to all of our employees. And I really think it's worth taking a moment to acknowledge.
Yeah. What comes to mind for you? Like, what do you think is shifted for you that is maybe something that people don't talk about? I mean, we've talked about the virtual world versus, being in person and what that looks like to go back to work and what that's going to look like. But what are some of the nuanced things that come to mind for you?
Well, I think the first one has got to be professional etiquette, and the way that
Mm,
we behave and the way that we expect each other to behave. Um, I'm wearing my Big Lebowski sweater, and I'm not thinking twice about it. And I don't know that I would have worn this to work ever. And I think that as an executive, as a leader, when people came to see me, or I was engaging with individuals, vendors, or maybe my direct reports, I expected a type of engagement, a type of decorum and professionalism that I'm just not going to get anymore. And I have to be okay with that, and I just have to set a different bar. Right now, I would prefer that people wear clothes without food on them, and I'd like them to be focused on the conversation. I prefer my one-on-ones with my direct reports not have a child in their lap. It is difficult to have a dialogue, but I'm not going to lose my marbles if a kid walks in and interrupts. And so, as a leader, I have to know that the etiquette has changed. We're going to see people behaving much more casually than we perhaps would have thought. Um, I think this is a pendulum swing that's always been happening. If we look at what happened, if you watch shows from the 1950s, and the way that people behaved at work versus what we were experiencing 3 years ago, there was some changes. We've just seen a very big acceleration, and we have to acknowledge that that's changed a lot.
yeah. Do you think that the etiquette, so if we're looking at times where you're going to have people that are at home and working virtually and then maybe having some days or some times where you're in person, do you think that you as a leader will have a different standard for me as your employee, whether we're virtually and if I wore this exact
Mm,
same outfit when we're in the office tomorrow, are you going to have a different standard for me? Of course, you don't know that I have yoga pants on, but let's just
right.
pretend that you didn't know that.
I think that I think like a lot of things, we have to be aware of these biases that are going to occur. I've been in this role as a leader, as an executive for many years, and I'm going to have some preconceived notions about what you wear, based on
Yeah.
years of experience. And so, yeah, I will think that. And as a person who is very aware of fashion, and I enjoy, as you and I have often spent time talking
Yeah.
about fashion, I would notice that you wore something the same. Now, I can acknowledge it, internally. Do I need to think less of you because of it? No, why should I? And maybe I would have in the past. And so again, just like any other bias, I think we have to be aware of those things, and that things are different and have changed. And uh, you know, there was, if you were not wearing a blue suit every day for 5 days in a row, in the 1960s, then you were a freak. So I don't know. We've definitely seen a way things have changed, and I think what we expect out of people's attire is definitely moving in a different direction.
Yeah. Before we move off of etiquette and attire, though, what really occurred to me the other day was I haven't worn heels
Mm,
for for sure. I have off and on over 2 years, but I did recently put some on, and I don't know how to walk in them as well as I used to because you're out of practice.
sure,
And I know that may be a foreign concept to you, but I'm naturally now I'm like, I don't really want to go back. Like I think I'm going to change my style a bit because it's kind of like why, and I don't want to
sure.
relearn some things.
I certainly think that, heels, heels for you. I think there's some boots that I've worn that are wildly uncomfortable, that I've thrown on occasion. I'm like, these are awful on my feet, and you have to question, why am I wearing them? Now, in many cases, I'm wearing them for me and not for anybody else, and so I will endure the pain. But there are things like, we could talk about whether it's heels, whether it's ties, whether it's sport coats, whether
Yeah.
it's there's so many things that I think the genie, if you will, has gone out of the bottle on. And I think, well, we can talk about etiquette. Maybe that's part of a bigger bubble, but there are these, I think, mores and cultural norms that I think we're going to see dissolve. We could spend a lot of time talking about, hey, we're okay with Zoom now, and oh, I'm okay with leftovers where I wasn't before. But I really think as a leader, there are these things that we are going to see change, and it is a lot about professional etiquette. I think attire certainly, and those strange little things. But I also think hiring and what the expectation is of an employer is changing, whether we like it or not. And I think you're going to find just interviewing is going to be different. I think I saw a little vignette the other day where a guy was doing an interview in a suit and a jacket, and he had to get up because his son walked in the room, and he was wearing a pair of Bermuda shorts, and the interviewer, the guy from the company, said, nice shorts, and the guy was mortified, and he stood up and he was wearing the same shorts. And so I think that's just, we're in a different place
Yeah.
than that as executives. And so your company is going to look at these things differently, and we have to expect that. I think I talk about work from home no differently as a firm. We need to look at working from home no differently than we have looked in the past of bringing your dog to work. There are people who absolutely have to bring their dog to work, and they're going to look for a company that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
Now, that's been going on for years. We're in Colorado, Boulder, half the companies let you do that, but it's not a law by any stretch.
Yeah.
And you know what? If it's important to me, I'll find a company that does that. Working remotely is going to be the same thing. There are going to
Yeah.
be firms that are 100% no way, you got to be brick and mortar, you're in the door, and that company is going to pay the penalty of having a smaller population of skilled resources to choose from. And that's completely fine with me. That's called capitalism, and they should have the right to do that. But the companies who are saying, hey, it's 3 days a week at home, 2 days a week
Yeah.
on average, and we're even going to give you a camera and a little hot pot for your desk. Those companies are going to have the opportunity to hire differently. And so that's the
Yeah.
etiquette that's impacting us in a real way. It's fun to say that I'm not actually wearing dress pants right now, but it's real that it's important for me that I
Yeah.
don't need to wear them, and
Yeah.
that I'm going to be able to work from a different place. And a company calls me and says, James, we want you to work from the Bahamas for half the time.
Yeah.
That's real and a differentiator for a firm, whereas a company that's not willing to do that is going to struggle.
Yeah.
And so those are the changes that I think leaders need to acknowledge.
Yeah. I also think just from a leadership development perspective, it was different when we were always in the office and there was different
Oh
things that
yeah,
we learned about presence and holding space and listening. Like there's a whole new set of things that we've learned and
absolutely.
ways to develop that are going to be different that we don't even know yet.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's interesting that we haven't seen, or we have seen, and I just have ignored it. There's got to be an executive. Well, let's look at it this way. Toastmasters has to have a Zoom component of their programming.
Yeah, for sure.
There needs to be some conversations around how to have executive presence, how
Yep.
to have poise and be a good communicator in a world in which I'm on a video camera. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying I know what those are, and I'm not saying I need to act like I did 2 years ago on camera. We just agreed that that ship has sailed. But that doesn't mean there are not ways for me and you to have an effective engagement, and there are ways for us to ensure that, even though I'm not going to be in the same room with you.
Yeah.
And I've got to build that rapport. We've got to think about ways to do that
Mhm.
going forward. And I think that's just that's this whole this professional
Mhm.
etiquette world is shifting considerably, and I think we need to look at it as a series of takeaways of what does it mean to be professional in a
Yeah.
world in which and I think it's bigger than Zoom, it's bigger than
Mhm.
remote.
Yeah.
It's what does it mean to act like a professional post COVID. And
Mhm.
I think that is the takeaway, is that we should be thinking about the ways that we behave, act, and manage in a post-COVID world, and make sure that we haven't we're not looking at we're not forgetting that things have changed on us.
Yeah. I guess, and also just to put another angle on it as we kind of put a cherry on top is if I look at it from an employee perspective,
Mm,
I need to be really clear about what is important to me
great
and
point.
knowing that what kind of company I want to work for. And you as a leader in an organization, you better know what those things for the talent base that you want to attract. What are
Totally
those
agree.
things so that there's a match? But I think there's a responsibility on both sides.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue, into maybe our next segment about the Great Resignation, which is what
Mhm.
is happening in our society, where the workforce is getting the opportunity to get off the hamster wheel for a moment and take a look at what's happening, and take it
Mhm.
and truly change the way that they look at work. And so, as employers, we need to be aware of that, and because employees certainly are. So. Um, let's pick that up next time
Okay.
on our next topic, which is, what does the Great Resignation mean to you? And I think I've been telling my people we need to reinvent the glue that holds our firm together, because it can't be what it was before. So what's the new glue that keeps us effective and cohesive? That's a good next topic.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we have a title. We have a
The
title.
new
The
glue.
glue. The new glue. What is your new glue?
Yeah,
Love it. All right. Till next
that's my new
time.
book. It's available at Barnes and Noble
We'll go and get it right now.
right now. All right.
See you
Good
next
talking to
time.
you. Take care.